The city is starting to come alive a little bit with chatter. The World Cup, as we know, next year, Toronto, Vancouver will be hosting 5 group stage matches each. Toronto will then have a round of 32. Vancouver will have a round of 16. So we're starting to get excited. And I was at an event last night. I was moderating a panel that included head coach of the men's national team, Jesse Marsh. And we're getting ready, guys. We are getting ready. Everyone is excited to talk about FIFA 2026. But I did ask him, where the state of the team is at. And he did say that when he first took the job, he wanted to be able to sit down and say, okay, how many players can we definitively name to the World Cup squad? Which, by the way, their motto is 26 for 26. And he's like, I could only name 12. And that was not good enough. He does feel, though, that since he took over the reins, they can now confidently name 22. What do you make of that assessment and just maybe the depth and player pool and how the team has progressed under Jesse Marsh wheels?
I think he's just about right. Some of it has to do with him bringing players into the team, and other players, it's more about just where they are in terms of the stage of their career. I thought that John Herdman did a really nice job bringing new players and attempting to bring in even more into the program. But some players were too young or not ready or didn't have their club football settled. So the Stars have kind of aligned with a number of different players to be able to be part of the Canadian fold. Just look up top. Promise David and Daniel Jefferson are both in very different places right now than they were a few years ago. Nathan Saliba, another one. Derek Cornelius, his game really stepping up, playing with Marseille and taking the next step in his career to put himself in the mix. So Nico Sigor, another player, change of association and comes in. So I think that the team is much more robust. They're deeper in a lot of different areas, but still, this is football and a lot of things can change relatively quickly. Players can fall out of form. I think right now what we're looking at is what a number of Canadian players are going to do for their club football in this upcoming season. It's going to be huge. For me, it's not just good enough having the faith of the manager, Andy. I think that you need to go and prove that you can play at the highest level possible over the next 10, 11 months in the build-up to the World Cup so you can be ready to play and compete at that time. So, yes, this is a good framework. It's a positive step in the right direction. Certainly the team is much more deeper than it was, even in comparison to the last World Cup. But there is still significant work to do, in my opinion.
When you look at this team as well, Wheels and Andy, you think about the X factors or what separates Canada from any other nation is the fact that they play or can play a high tempo football. And I also think when you look at the players that were young a couple of years ago that were emerging are now hitting that 25, 24, 26 mark. Now you're getting another quadrant. You're getting the ones before that are coming in that know the blueprint and know what that looks like. So you look at Marsh's system, speed, want to be aggressive, want to play high-tempo football. These are players in Canada that can do that. I think it's just another side of the game that will always be questioned in terms of how can you adjust and play. So I think literally him taking that job and looking at the blueprint of Canadians, it made sense. So you're looking at now probably 12 or 13 that were shoo-ins, but there are more players that can emulate what these players have already done, the Jonathan Davids, and Wheels already touched on Saliba. It's easier for them to look at that way of playing and be like, hey, I can fit into that system. So credit to Marsh for coming, but also for saying how he wants to play, and the players just adapted to it.
I wonder what that number would have been for, what do you think, guys? What do you think that number would have been for John Herdman?
A lot less. I think. Well, for me, I think when you look at the system, there still would have been players emerging, but I just think there's no coincidence the type of players that are succeeding under Marsh's system because of how they play. Like the Salibas, I know right now he's in a lot of turmoil, but you look at like a Schaffelberg, like they play a certain type of way, and Marsh will never deviate from that. I don't know John Herdman's way, truthfully. So I just think that Marsh, it just worked. It was a perfect marriage.
I think, go ahead. I was going to say to answer that, but to answer that as well, leave it with Jordan talking about, I think it's also tactics and systems, because you do have to give John Herdman credit. A lot of the players that he brought in had the opportunity to play for other countries. Stefan Eustáquio is a good example of someone that Herdman convinced to come play for Canada. Kind of what you said, a lot of these players, some of it too is a little bit of timing. So maybe they would have blossomed and we'd be in the same situation if Herdman was still the head coach. But when it comes to tactics and placement, I mean, doesn't the name Moise Bombito just stick out to you, Wheels?
Yeah.
And where Marsh is playing him?
that was a timing thing. And I think that was the biggest question when Marsh took over, what the center back pairing would be like. And compare that to what John Herdman worked with in terms of his center backs, like Vittoria, put in a shift for this team and players of that ilk. I think that they did very well considering that these weren't players that were playing at a really, really high level, like a top 5 league in European football. And that's where Cornelius and Bombito find themselves now. So it's a little bit about timing. It's a little bit about opportunity as well. I just think that these things are a little bit secular, because remember when we were in COVID and we were starting that World Cup qualifying, like a player like Alistair Johnston wasn't established in this team. Right. Yeah. So it really takes time. We've seen incredible growth from a number of different players. And I just think that Marsh has more weapons at his disposal, players that have received that opportunity or taken that opportunity in terms of their club football, and they're trying to work their way into the national team mix. So, yeah, it's not all the manager, but I think it just speaks to the state of Canadian football and where our players are at right now.
Yeah.
Having said that, he definitely mentioned, and this was something I know, Wheels, that we touched on when we were covering the Canadian Shield. There's about 10, 11 players right now on this national team who could be on that transfer market when it comes to club football. And Jesse Marsh has said that he's made himself available to the players. In fact, he said many of them have reached out and have spoken to him and asked his opinion on where to go, where should they play, how do they get those minutes, because the goal is all 2026 and wanting to be in the best shape possible. But I don't know, are you still a little nervous, Jordan, when you know that, 10 to 11 players are now? I mean, yes, Jonathan David is now signed. Tajon Buchanan, we still don't know where he's going to end up. Where's Kyle Larin going to end up? Like, there's still some question marks around some players where you're like, this is very crucial what they choose next because of how it could affect national team.
Yeah, it's a big year, and I think every team in the world has to deal with that to some degree, but I just don't think it's the same amount. It's not a number. It's not nearly a dozen, right? And then crucial players. And as much as we want to talk about the player pool in Canada, there's probably 30, 35 that Marsh is like looking at on our broader scheme to be like, hey, let me cut this down to the 23 or 26 that you're going to take. So, yeah, it could be a bit nervous for the manager, but also players as well. Because a big year going into the World Cup, you want to be making sure that you're healthy. But most importantly, you need to be playing. And we've seen players that have quality, but if you're not playing and you come into camp, you're a step behind. So going into the biggest competition in the world, you want everyone to pick the right club. So I think Marsh will be checking his phone every day. He's just seeing that it's vibrating, seeing who's going. And you're like, it's going to be one of these. It's going to be like, oh, no. Because those players and finding the perfect match is the hardest thing to do in football. You've seen, I could go on and on about players that were great in Spain, but then go to England, don't play, or vice versa, or had the best career of their life and go somewhere else and they're on the bench. It is kind of a gamble. So with the quality that Canada has in their squad, you just hope the majority of those signings end up working for the benefit of the group.
And these are incredibly important players too, Andy. Let's go through like some of the question marks in this Canada team. You're going to have Alphonso Davies returning from a very serious injury. You're going to have to watch that progress and now his commitments with Bayern Munich, what that looks like in the upcoming months. Liam Miller's back on the field in preseason for Hull City. I think that he has a significant role to play. Earlier this week on OneSoccer Direct, we talked about Luc de Fougerolles. I think Ismail Kone's future is huge. Whatever, like that could be one of the biggest ones. Tajon Buchanan right up there. You mentioned it. Larin, Jebison has had his season sorted out. He's going to be going to Preston. Like, just count. Like, just go down the list. Like these, I think you're absolutely right, Andy. These are not fringe players that are competing for a spot in the 26 or the 23 or whatever. These are players that are competing and contending to be in the starting 11. And that's why if I am the national team's coach, if I am Jesse Marsh, I'm like, yeah, I like the nucleus. I like the base that I have, but there's going to have to be another step and some big decisions to be made over the next month.